11. The OI Committee sensitizes foreign students. Sensitizing foreign students. There are some memories that are hard to miniaturize in the plethora of one's experiences. The IIE foreign student capture was one of them. Taghi and I agonized over the fact that these folks were seeking to remold the thinking of us as foreign students into their own liking. We kept thinking of ways through which we can counter this strategy. Taghi, my wise Iranian sage, came up with a proposal to run a session for some of the top foreign students in the elite US universities. These were usually students studying in the scientific disciplines, but with no exposure to the difficulties that technology was imposing on small countries. We targeted students from Harvard, Yale, Columbia, students in medical schools, engineering schools, Arab students, Asians, and African students, especially those financed by persons like the Shah of Iran and Gaddafi in Libya. We also had a good strategy of how to reach these students. Having tasted success in using Barry Commoner's contacts with the UN Environment Programme, we set on a strategy to solicit the cooperation of UN delegates by having them alert their students in the USA and by presenting this as a UN-sponsored project. Taghi thought that I should prepare sessions on the political economy of energy, environment, and development. Thus was born the first OI Committee's Foreign Student Workshop. First Foreign Students Workshop 1975. The first session of this venture was held at Washington University, St. Louis, under the auspices of Barry Commoner's Center for the Biology of Natural Systems. We had about 50 students attending. It was held in June 1975, in the first 3 weeks of the summer holiday, so students could attend and at the end have enough time to enjoy the rest of their summer holidays. In terms of receptivity, it was a resounding success. We had compiled a compendium of selected readings into a small booklet, which each student was required to read before the sessions. The sessions were primarily discussion sessions, moderated by a few members of the OI Committee present, with some special guests invited to come in and give short lectures. The main sessions were held in the morning from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. The program provided breakfast and lunch, with the students being allowed the afternoon and evening to visit the tourist sites in St. Louis, Missouri, and to plan their own dinners. St. Louis was a city of historic beauty. It had 18 certified historic districts to keep everyone busy. The city was not short on entertainment either. I recall BB's Jazz Bar as a great spot. The Chinese and Malay students among us, however, were not into clubbing, so I assisted them in gaining access to a small cooking facility so that they could prepare noodles for their habitual midnight noodles line. The students were very happy with the absence of any examinations, and they became active in the discussions that prevailed. Most of my readings came from a journal in circulation at that time, edited by the Union for Radical Political Economics, URPE. The URPE was fresh on the scene, having just been founded in 1968. ERPI had an interdisciplinary membership of academics and activists. Its mission was to promote the study, development, and application of radical political economic analysis to social problems. I implemented my contributions with my growing interest in the history of economic thought. This was a subject matter that was completely new even to those participants who were students of neoclassical economics. Pushback on science hegemony. The second version of this workshop was held in August 1977. It became more pointed and focused this time around. We were now targeting foreign students who were close to completing their studies at the doctorate level. Our motivation was to mount a counter-struggle against science hegemony. Let me explain what science hegemony meant. In the 1970s, we were seeing scientific advancements being incorporated into advanced technology. That was good. But then we were also seeing that technology starting to drive policy, and that was bad. Take involuntary sterilization of women as a case in point. The drive for mass sterilization of women began in the 1970s when, encouraged by loans and grants amounting to tens of millions of dollars from three major international organizations, the World Bank, the Swedish International Development Authority, and the UN Population Fund, India embarked on an ambitious population control program. Sterilization by laparoscopy was a newly developed procedure that provided permanent birth control. During the 1975 emergency in India, when civil liberties were suspended, Sanjay Gandhi, son of the former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, began what was described by many as a gruesome campaign to sterilize poor Indian men. There were reports of police cordoning off villages and virtually dragging the men to surgery. This campaign also made an appearance in Salman Rushdie's novel Midnight Children. Sterilization as policy also found roots in the USA. No one today knows exactly how many Native American women were sterilized during the 1970s. One base for calculation is provided by the General Accounting Office, whose study covered only 4 of the 12 IHS regions over 4 years, 1973 to 1976. IHS, which means the Indian Health Services region, was divided into 12 physical areas of the United States: Alaska, Albuquerque, Bemidji, Billings, California, Great Plains, Nashville, Navajo, Oklahoma, Phoenix, Portland, and Tucson. Each area had a unique group of tribes that they worked with on a day-to-day basis. Within those limits, 3,406 Indian women were reportedly sterilized according to the GAO statistics. Another estimate was provided by Lemon Brightman, who is Lakota, and who devoted much of his life to this issue, suffering a libel suit by doctors in the process. His educated guess, without exact calculations to back it up, was that 40% of the native women and 10% of the native men were sterilized during the decade. Brightman estimates that the total number of Indian women sterilized during the decade was between 60,000 and 70,000. This was science hegemony turned into an inappropriate policy. We had the travesty also of GMO seeds during this time. Genetically modified seeds were a significant step forward in the production of agricultural crops. GM seeds are seeds that have been modified to contain specific characteristics such as resistance to herbicides in the case of Roundup Ready products, or resistance to pests in the case of BT corn. Monsanto became the giant in this field, using its cash to forge beneficial relationships with leading universities and subsequently applying for patents on these new scientific processes. At one time, the Monsanto company was seeking wide-ranging control over swine reproduction methods through patents which, if granted, would give the corporation economic rights over any offspring produced using those techniques. Documents obtained by Christopher Then, a German-based researcher from Greenpeace, showed Monsanto's attempt to secure broad intellectual property protection for swine herds. Monsanto's spokesperson, Chris Horner, said that the company merely wanted to protect its selective breeding processes, including the means of identifying specific genes in pigs and the use of a specialized insemination device. It wasn't that simple. Once a patent relating to a genetic condition in pigs had been issued, if in 5 years or so this becomes a desirable condition, Monsanto could file lawsuits against any farmer who owns pigs with these genes, even if he had never bought a pig from Monsanto. Critics call this a dangerous power grab. Our second enrollment. Our next enrollment was targeted at foreign professional scientists who were being recruited to return to their countries and to support this drive for science hegemony without even realizing its impact. Our intake was lower this time, about 25 students, and all of them were either PhD candidates or the equivalent. We specifically wanted students who were about to return to their native country and hopefully take up positions in decision making. In reality, we were really following the playbook of the IIE program. I'm not sure how the recruiting process was conducted, but all of the participants had volunteered for the course and were fully aware that this was about radical thinking on the issues of environment and development. By then, we had an internal mentoring system in which each one of us in the OI committee was to mentor at least one student. The students took readily to the novel analyses and started to seek guidance to the different roles they can play in their own disciplines. Peggy Davies, with the assistance of Chantal Tanquanti, went on to develop the Reference Center on Ecology and International Development. This is the only documented reference to the Oil Committee International, which resides in an article on this reference center featured in the Washington University Record, January 23, 1975. Memories of an alumnus. One of the students from these workshops was a Libyan student by the name of Abdul Magad Rutresh. I remembered him because his name was unusual for an Arab person. I also had a picture of him and another student with me in a pub in St. Louis in 1977. I usually don't do this, nor do I have the resources to do it, but in 2021, I decided to Google his name and see what I could find. there appeared a citation to Abdulmajid Tresh, Professor Emeritus of Biochemistry and Urology at Boston University School of Medicine. I sent out an inquiry with a picture. I was amazed to have made this reconnection with a student who had experienced the Oil Committee Foreign Student Workshop some 44 years ago. Abdul from Libya, as we had known him, promptly responded, recalling some of the past experiences in his email as follows. One thing I would cherish is our friendship and trust. After the program ended, I know we met and we talked about how there was a moment where some people thought I was disruptive and troublemaker, and there was a consideration to kick me out of the program, but you stood for me. I was the guy who picked up the mail and distributed it daily to all students, and that was my way of reaching out to all of them. I recall we met and we talked a great deal about how important to bring people together from diverse cultures, thought processes, backgrounds, etc. And that was one important aspect of such a program. Professor Tresh is now the editor-in-chief of the journal Androgens, Chemical Research and Therapeutics, a global open access journal for peer-reviewed science, research, and education.